most of you, I guess, already heard about SPE, so it's a mysterium more or less. In fact, it is not. But there are different aspects we want to look at. So, as you heard, I'm from a technical background, but also from the research background and also from the healthcare background. So we try to go around and position it halfway. So today is the introduction and the perspectives. And so we offer you 10 plus of those events, like a podcast with the same questions for everybody. And what's the motivation actually to work with SPEs, the next generation data analysis? Uh, One motivation could be this one. So you may or may not know the TEDAS project. So the TMF in Berlin was involved heavily towards European health data space. And there is this interesting Article 73, and it's talking about secure processing environments. This text doesn't go away. This is very interesting because we are operating similar things already in research. This is like a project environment creation. You can upload data in a secure space. How nice would this be if your data set would be in a secure space? Then you can allow for data analysis. Then you have to be careful with results because you don't want to have a privacy problem. So results are extracted, and then this project is decommissioned. Beautiful in PowerPoint. In the real world, we see there's 2 or 4 or 25 problems on the way. And even if you look further in the regulation, you find this one. This is from the TERAS 2 project. And suddenly you see SPE, SPE Federation, and you see EHDS, SPC, and think, what the heck? How should actually anybody wanting to provide data access handle this? This was actually the beginning of a lunch meeting last year in Berlin, where we invited different stakeholders. The first one was the data providers who asked us, how do we have to prepare our data to put it into this SPE? Then providers of those SPE, very technical, and said, oh, it's all there. People just have to learn command line tools and everything works as commissioned. And then we asked the users of those SPEs and they told, oh my, I never will be able to operate those systems. They have to be quite different. So that was one motivation, where other people told, no, actually, we try to avoid this. We actually rely on data transfer. So if somebody asks for our data, we meticulously look at those projects, we look at the people, and then we transfer the data much easier. And the data users agreed and they say, yes, excellent. If the data is on my premise, I can do what you want. I can use my tools until, there were some problems. I will tell you now. So NFTI for health, that's the project in the background actually, is helping on this way. So we make data findable. So there's a study hub and local data hubs. We describe how the data can be accessed. So the data stays usually with the data holders, but we have to describe how I can apply for data use and what happens afterwards. Then, of course, the data has to be interoperable, that we can understand the data and even how the data was captured. And the data should be reusable. With this change in design, that in most cases the data transfer is getting more and more complicated as we see. Adjacent to that, we have to support people. There's trainings, guidelines, white papers, help desk, very important, those help desks. And further on, we have to look at the European health data space, other health research infrastructures in Europe, and of course at the other communities in NFDI. So this is all there, but that's not the main topic today. We look at this thing. And then this came. And I'm not sure if you're aware of this. This is 4 weeks ago. A UK biobank, a huge collaboration, 500 patients, all volunteers. Actually, they have questionnaires, they get imaging, they actually give them samples so that the DNA could be sequenced. And this is a shock because we ourselves in 2 projects are customers of UK Biobank, and we like the way a lot how they do it, meanwhile, with the secure processing environments. And so this is shaking the foundation Now, there are different strategies to act with that. So you could say there was no data breach, or you would say something, it's like me. I would go into it and ask, "Yeah, what did really happen?" Or you could say, well, this is 1 month old. Maybe it goes away, but in fact it doesn't. So as you see here, scientists until late 2024 could apply for data use and they would get the data. So we were a little bit too late with our project, so we never got the data. So we were in the second phase and only got access in a secure processing environment. That's what I'm talking about. That's the experience. Not always good. And what happened was that some files were posted online before there was the change to the secure processing environment. What happened obviously was that people doing analysis uploaded their scripts in GitHub or GitLab and involuntarily, or maybe, I don't know, it was uploaded data with those scripts. And it was a lot of data. And people found it in GitHub and actually alarmed the biobank. The data was removed. But question was, how could this happen? So one data expert looked at it and said, this is shocking. He deleted it right away. The UK Biobank said, we didn't do anything wrong. We have contracts. And whoever did this is liable for that. And we have to clean this up. But we did everything correct. So I think the truth is in between. And so we have to take this really seriously. The Guardian, very reputable British newspaper, actually did a test on re-identification after UK Biobank told there's no problem. They did the journalist attack, as well known in the scene. So they have some prior knowledge. They knew two people who volunteered for the project, one with a uh, pretty common thing, a fracture and a seizure. They didn't find this person, but the second one was found. She had her uterus removed, and she told the journalist when it did happen and told the date of birth, no, just a month and a year, and they found her. This is in the data set was, it was at least pseudonymized, maybe even anonymized in this case. And everybody was shocked that the journalist could tell this person, this volunteer, what else she had, because they found all the diagnosis in there. This is, I think, a huge motivation to do better than data transfer, because you cannot really prevent those things. And there's a guy cited, we come back to this Felix Ritchie later. He asked, are these people aware that the internet exists? Because there's always databases and you could combine different data. And this actually is not really surprising, this kind of attack. The journalist attack is around since long, long time, described 20 years ago with Latanya Sweeney and Bradley Marlin already. Yeah, but it's another motivation actually for us to do better, and the British can do better, much better. And so this is something which is already from 2018. They invented the 5 safes. This is great, UK Data Services, and they say we have to look at the people. People have to be safe. So they need education, they need certificates. If people want to use data, they have to describe their projects, and the project has to be adequate. The methods have to be adequate. The goal has to be interesting for the people giving the data. Then you have to look at that the settings are safe. So they suggested secure processing environments already in these days. And then you have to look at the outputs. And you should make the data safe. So this sounds really good. Very nice on PowerPoint. Say everything solved, done. So let's go for it. But if you look closer at any of those boxes, and that's what we do in the next half hour, it's quite difficult actually. But the motivation is great. So in the end, what we see is something like this very same Felix Ritchie, they described 2018 already. Look at this. So the link. So he told you cannot make everything safe. If you want to make the data usable, so maybe this slider, this would be very secure. This would be non-secure. This is left channel, right channel. You have to make the project safe. So let them give you a very good project description, educate people, let them make exams, certificates, etc. Then define the settings so that the data would be checked in an SPE. You need certificates for the ISO certification, for example. and check the outputs, what people are taking outside, then this could be a safe environment and would actually prevent cases like the one we heard. The data would be involuntarily be uploaded in GitLab.
Non, il faut que j'aille dans.
So, Frau Waldinger, wir hören Sie ja jetzt nicht mehr. Okay. So this is and I like this a lot. I like this Felix Ritchie approach a lot. He does it, you see, since almost 10 years. And that's why we wanna talk about it. And Marie Gebhardt actually is very experienced in this field because the research data portal on healthcare actually has to deal with exactly those problems. So question would be, Marie, how do you deal how do you make your data findable? The data of the both Medical Informatics Initiative and some first studies of the NFDI for Health Consortium. How do you do that?
Yeah, so it depends on the data. So the Medical Informatics Initiative has a feasibility portal where you can, of course, you have to register. Not everyone is allowed to go there, but you can go into this portal and then you search the data items which are interesting for you, and you will get like live answer how many patients are available for your scientific research question. But also for NFTR for health data for the studies, it's a little bit more difficult because usually they don't have these kind of portals. But availability, so it can be described by metadata, and this is done in the Health Study Hub. So it can be found and searched and found these data.
Okay, this metadata seems to be very important. So maybe for those who don't know about the metadata, so usually you're interested in data, right? You want to know, do you have the data? But why do we need the metadata?
Yeah, metadata is data about the data. So, for example, I don't know what kind of project it is, and if you are allowed to access it, that's metadata, and more about the project data, like metadata about what kind of variables you have. So, what variables do you have? How many individuals will be there? This kind of data is very interesting.
And it helps with findability, obviously, because you already find the blocks of data like demographics, like medication, clinical chemistry, right? So this is very important, and it's quite difficult for the data holding organizations to prepare the data that has enough data, metadata to be discoverable. So that's how. So if you go along the five saves, that's the thing we want to do. So how could I apply for data use in this case?
Yeah, so you have to plan your project. You can do it together with us. So we will help you with that and consult you if necessary. And you write an application like you would also do for the UK Biobank. And this application will be forwarded at some point to the locations of the Medical Informatics Initiative. They have use and access committees who take a look at the project. So each location takes a look at it and they take a decision if they participate in the project or not and will report it back to us. We collect this, and in the end, we have a collection of locations who want to participate in a project, and we can have a contract then, of course, about the project to make everything safe and agree about everything.
But how would you know that the project is safe? So I think I did some a proposal as well some weeks ago. So who is deciding in the end that people can get data access?
So the first thing is, of course, that you have to make the application really ready for the USC. So
Mhm.
every content which is needed for this decision, of course, has to be there. That's the first step in making it safe. It's a
And so
checklist.
use an access committee UAC, yeah.
Yeah, so the use and access
Mhm.
committees get a complete application. That's the first step. So you really have to have a checklist for that. And the USCs, they of course they take a look at it. They understand it. They look into the depth of the content. What is to be done, and do we have the data for it? And also, yeah, checks ethics vote and
Oh
ethics
yeah. Mhm.
committee before. So ethics vote has to be part of it, and the ethics committee already before the application is handed in checks multiple things. So, for
Okay,
example,
so
if
it's the
the
same.
go on.
Sorry. The same like in the UK Biobank. So those proposals are really difficult. We had to hand in 3 times because there's was always a layperson in the committee. We had to describe things more simple, our goals for the
Ah,
layperson, and this was really useful. So I think it was UK Biobank as an example is very good proposals, and they're really triple checked. So, but so I see it's comparable with the FTPG as well. Yeah. Okay, so now we got the proposal. Decision was positive. How do you create safe people?
yeah.
So that's a difficult one. I know.
That's a difficult one, yeah. For example, I don't have so much impact on that. And the ethics committees check for that before they give a vote. They check the qualification of the involved people. We need different qualifications. It has to be like data analysts and epidemiologic expertise and things like this have to be involved. And this is checked already by the ethics committee. Apart from that, we can only give consulting to people and advise to use more consulting. We also have like extra consulting. It's called EVA for MRI. They help with epidemiological questions in case it is necessary to prepare people for what is coming.
Okay, so you give some training. So that's it was actually that was a complicated part in UK Biobank, as to come back to our example, because say achieving safe people is quite hard. So there's one PI has to sign up, one principal investigator, and then of course you got analysts, so usually 2 or 3. They all have to go through trainings. So the PIs have to go first. Afterwards, the other ones can do trainings. And this was longer YouTube videos, 3, and there was an exam in the end. And so if you passed the exam, for the unlikely case, you would get a certificate you can upload in a profile just to enter the secure processing environment. So this is very much streamlined, and as long as the PI doesn't do this training, nobody is seeing any data. I think that was quite stringent. And I think a reaction on this data breach we heard about in The Guardian, because this was all afterwards. So they came much too late because the effect was already 1 year ago, and now they changed to the SPEs. So, but so I got those trainings. So would that help me in any way if I would come to the FTPG and say I wanna use data there? Maybe not. So.
There are probably aspects which can be reused, where you can reuse this knowledge because they will be similar between the two data sources. And there are probably aspects where the MRI is unique and where you will have to get like extra training, which is especially for that. Um, and yeah, we don't force people currently to do some certification. It has been discussed not only once
Mm,
to do it, but I think we didn't do it because it is a lot of effort to set something like this up in a very
yeah.
good way. It's hard to do that. But if people came from UK Biobank with their education, I would probably be happy.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, and then because we had to do another training, so all research was blocked, and we had to do another training, which told us to not to add data to R scripts and in any way, because that was the leak actually which happened. So there's continuous education, and there's discussion in ERSC, in the European Open Science Cloud, if we would have some interoperability on those trainings, so also cross acceptance. So I think this has to happen, because otherwise for every single SPE, you have to do a separate set of trainings, and maybe the training certificate expires after 1 year, you have to do a training again. This is all just to make people safe. But I think, yeah, that's if you look in Europe, the same we see in the Netherlands with the Health RI collaboration. So, and I think it's something we have to be aware of, that those trainings could be harmonized to make it easier. Yeah. So, but then next one would be, couldn't we just make the data safe? So what if this it would be a cool strategy actually to say we want to circumvent all of this. So we anonymize the data and actually just release anonymous data sets. Would be easier. GDPR doesn't count, so not so much red tape. Would be nice, right? Would it help in any way? So of course it doesn't, but
Yeah, it
Uh,
doesn't. It doesn't because it's when you have a research question, you might need exactly this kind of information which gets lost when you do the anonymization. So it's not possible for every kind of project. It is possible for parts of projects, and um, in the European health data space, they also have this concept that you get like anonymous data and you work with it. But anonymization it is not easy. So to really have a safe anonymization is difficult. And actually, in our infrastructure, we are really hesitating. So we don't really want to do that. Yeah, in the end, the locations really want to be sure that it is anonymous. Yeah, so this
yeah.
aspect is difficult. And then, of course, the aspect that you lose all the interesting information in your data.
But how, as we know from the TMF, and Fabian Brasser is later in this seminar series as well. So he's one of the experts in the field. So I think it was quite interesting in those trainings. If you get this data set and you want to de-identify or anonymize the data, so what would you do? You would at first remove some features which might be identifying. Yeah, of course,
Yeah,
any
of
kind
course.
of numbers, names. Yeah.
Yeah, and of course, I would check which part of the data makes individuals recognizable. So who are, I don't know, have a really high body height or something like this. So I
Yeah.
have to throw out all these outliers, and I lose all. I mean, when I look for special, I don't know, lab values or something, and I have to throw all this information out, it's obvious that I lose very important information.
Yeah, so that means not only the data set is getting smaller, but it's getting shorter because you have to exclude some people.
Yeah.
And I think that's exactly the experience that you could anonymize data with a high likelihood, but the data set would be basically useless. So there's concept around, and yeah, so I think so the goal would be to have the data in high resolution still, and instead make the environment and the people safer, right? I think that's a pretty interesting strategy to follow up, yeah. How could we make the settings safe? That would be the next question. So I think that's quite difficult because you have to choose a vendor who does it. And so in the case of the UK Biobank, this vendor would be Amazon Web Services, and the functionality is awesome. So actually, what we experienced in the last half year in the web services is good. So there's a trusted research environment, so including the authentication, the certificates of this cloud-based solution, and the settings are pretty good, I think. But what we see, the safe settings mean also that we cannot use the tools we want to use. So there was only a limited set of tools in this SPE. And this, I think this is an ongoing problem we have to discuss. Which tools would we actually need in such an SPE? Because there was only two options. You could use either RStudio or you could use Python. And I think there was a third one. And so people have to be trained on that to be able to make use of the data. And if the training is not good enough, so we have a problem where things happen like scripts are actually annotated with some clinical data, right? So second thing is that usually the data holding organization, I think is same would be true for the FTPG, right? You could not operate such an SPE yourself, or maybe not.
No, we organized us in a way that we don't do it ourselves. We would
Exactly.
request the service from somewhere else.
Exactly. But the question then would be who pays for it? So usually there would be a cost table. And what we experience in the UK Biobank is that there's money you have to pay up front for using the data. Additionally, you have to pay money for processing. There's processing fees, and you pay money for storage. And if you want to keep some data for a longer time, so who pays for that? That's actually then the tendency would be actually to get the data out of the SPE in order to hold on. And so I think this is not really regulated yet, and what is not known yet. So there's quite some discussions in the European space which certificates would be needed actually for those SPEs. So which one would I choose? So there's some around, and we will see some here in the seminar series. You could ask questions then. So how expensive would it be? How am I paying actually? And how could data leaks be prevented like we had before? So, and I think that was quite successful because people are trained. So people have the contracts anyway, and this SPE doesn't allow for any data export in the way which was described in the Guardian before. Yeah. Good. This was the settings. So I have to ask, are there any questions in the chat we should chew on a little bit? So doesn't seem to be the case. So this SPE discussion is ongoing. So we just reported in one TMF working group that in the European Open Science Cloud, there are 3 different secure processing environments which are ongoing. They're all different, and we're all not sure if they both fit on our purposes. So that's why we got this series actually, just to look at some in order to be more able to decide which one we should take. Okay, so that's now we got the safe project. We got the people safe. We know that the data cannot be safe all the way because we want to have high resolution data. The settings could be as safe with this dilemma that you still want to work with the data, but you know, there's limitations on what you can use in this environment. How would you check the outputs? So that was the last safe. How could we do that?
So in the MRI, we don't have this situation yet, but we have discussed we have already thought about that when we use an SPE, and I just guess how the locations would react. They would want a control or a check at the end where people they trust, like experts, really look into the data and check if the output is what was expected and what was agreed on. I mean, how you would choose like these experts, so not every location has to do this check itself, is not clear. That would be an open question, but you would probably want something like that.
Yeah, so I think it's really difficult to do that. So the advantage of the FDVG would be that you got this transparency portal, right? So could you tell how this works? So
yeah, we at least have some output. We have some output of the projects when you don't talk about the result data, but when you have like a publication, for example, so all projects are published in this transparency portal, and researchers have to report if there's a publication. And of course, then we list it in the transparency portal. Patients can see it. And we also tried to describe projects so that lays can understand what is done in the projects. Just a short paragraph extra for these people. Plus, if there's no publication, there are at least reports from the project. So you get some kind of idea about the output, but of course not so much about the really details.